My name is Kathleen Marden. I'm MUFON's Director of Experiencer Research, and I'm also on the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters that specializes in consciousness studies. I'm on their board of directors. And Betty and Barney Hill were my aunt and uncle. That is how I became involved and interested in all of this. I was 13 when they were traveling home from a short vacation through the White Mountains of New Hampshire, when they had a close encounter with a flying disc. It came very, very low. They watched it over a period of approximately 1 hour. At closest approach, it was within 100 feet of their vehicle. It stopped over the highway. Barney got out of the car at that point, looked up at it. He took his binoculars off the car seat and walked into an adjacent field. When the craft moved to that field, he held the binoculars up to his eyes and he saw 8 to 11 entities on board that craft that he described as being, quote, somehow not human. They were dressed in black shiny uniforms, and all of them except for one then moved away from the windows to what appeared to be a panel on the back of this corridor that seemed to encircle the craft. And when they did that, he could see them from their knees up to the tops of their heads. Their arms went up, and when they did, the craft descended even lower. There were lights on what were like little back wings that slid out from sides of the craft, and something started to drop down from the bottom of the craft. At that point, he became very, very fearful that he was going to be captured, and he said, like a bug in a net. He broke away, he ran back to the car, screaming to Betty that they had to get out of there or they were going to be captured. So they did get out of there, and quickly. But as he was entering the car, he saw this craft change position again, and it moved over the top of their vehicle, he thought. He told Betty to roll down the window and look up. She was expecting to see the lights from the craft. She did not. All she saw was blackness. And then, within a few seconds, she and Barney heard a series of buzzing sounds that seemed to be striking the trunk of their vehicle. When they arrived home, they found magnetized spots on the trunk of their car. But what happened to them when this occurred, when they were in their vehicle, is that they felt a tingling sensation through their bodies and their car vibrated. The next thing they knew, they were about 30 miles down the highway. They had little memory of what had occurred in the interim. They remembered a roadblock somewhere along the way. They remembered a fiery orb that seemed to be sitting on the ground. They didn't remember when or where that happened. They drove on home. They were looking for a police officer. They were looking for something that might be open. They were seeking human contact, but they did not find it. When they arrived home, they found evidence that something had happened to them. They were later than they had anticipated, and not long after that, they discovered that they were missing at least 2 to 3 hours' time. Betty's dress was torn in several locations. She put it in her closet. The next time she took it out, it was coated with a pink powdery substance, and that has been analyzed in various laboratories, and the results have always been anomalous. Barney's best dress shoes were so deeply scraped that he had to purchase new shoes. The watches they had been wearing that night were broken and never worked again. I mentioned the spots on the trunk of the car. It also had an emotional impact upon Betty and Barney. They reported it to the Air Force. They reported it to the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. They reported it to scientists, and this underwent scientific study. And many of the scientists who studied this believed that it was real. Barney ended up having a referral to a psychiatrist because he developed post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the memories that he did have. And so they were referred to Dr. Benjamin Simon. He was a prominent Boston psychiatrist who, during World War II, had set up the psychiatric unit at Mason General Hospital on Long Island in New York. He successfully treated veterans who were returning from the war, and this is the reason that they were referred to him. So he did treat Betty and Barney over a period of 6 months. He was a master at deep trance hypnosis. He hypnotized them separately so that they could not contaminate one another's information, and also because some of their memories were so traumatic that it could have caused further damage to them if they remembered all of this at one time. So there was a great deal of evidence. They never intended to reveal their story to the public. But in 1965, a Boston newspaper reporter was able to receive information from one of Betty's friends who knew the story and violated confidentiality. That newspaper reporter went to the White Mountains and did an investigation. He found 12 to 14 other individuals in the White Mountains who saw that craft in that general location on the night that this occurred. So there were multiple witnesses to this event as well. Not the abduction itself, but the craft. It's an extraordinary story. I believe that it's the best evidence case in history. Betty also passed a lie detector test. Betty and Barney were prominent in the state of New Hampshire, and this is why they didn't want the story told. First, they were an interracial couple, and that could have a negative impact upon them. But she was a social worker for the state of New Hampshire. He worked for the post office, and they were both very active in the civil rights movement. Barney was on the local and regional boards of the NAACP. He was appointed to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission State Advisory Committee, and he had even received an award from Sergeant Shriver from the federal government for the work that he did on the U.S. poverty program to improve the lives of individuals in the state of New Hampshire. So they were prominent people. They were credible people and very well grounded. And that's the story of what happened to them. Betty appointed me as a family member to tell their story. My background is in social work and education. I wanted to investigate this myself, and so I trained with the Mutual UFO Network in 1991 to become a field investigator. We have chapters all over the world, and that was my beginning of the investigation of their case. Over the next 15 years or so, I did an extensive investigation. I did the archival research on their case. I attempted to puncture every step of the way of what they remembered having occurred. I dealt with all of the skeptics' arguments, and I took them one by one to see if they would hold up under scrutiny, and they did not. I did a comparative analysis of Betty's and Barney's statements under hypnosis and discovered that the statements they made were very much alike. And Betty had had a series of 5 dreams about this. Skeptics had stated that they believed Barney had only relived the events in Betty's dream and that Betty had only repeated those events. What I found out is that there was much more material than was in those dreams. Betty and Barney told the same story, and some of Betty's dream material was contradicted by what Betty and Barney stated under hypnosis. So they told the same story, and there's a lot of evidence that this is a real case. I am the Mutual UFO Network's Director of Experiencer Research, and over the past 3 years, Dr. Don C. Donderi, who is a retired professor of psychology at McGill University and a statistician, have worked on a comprehensive study of 516 experiencers to identify commonalities that they share. Dr. Donderi also administered the American Personality Inventory, and that measures one's knowledge of this phenomenon and on a personal level, and also the emotional signature that we know experiencers have. And it's an exciting study. I am going to, and Dr. Donderi as well, will reveal the results of our study at the Mutual UFO Network's International Symposium this year. It's in New Jersey. And let's see, I think I have, okay, this is where it will be, the dates. You can go to MUFON.com and click on the link to that symposium to learn more. The Mutual UFO Network will also publish the results of our findings in their symposium proceedings. It will be published, part of it, in a book that I have written that will be published in 2019. And Dr. Donderi and I will both speak on the main stage and reveal the results of our study. I think that it really moves us ahead in understanding what is going on.
Awesome. Well, thank you.